Gobble gobble.
Gobble gobble. Happy Thanksgiving.
Welcome to the Hackaday podcast. My name is Mike Szczys. I'm editor-in-chief of Hackaday.
Happy Thanksgiving. I'm Elliot Williams. I'm managing editor of Hackaday.
This is episode 95. Today we're talking about booting FreeDOS from a vinyl record, floating on mushrooms, and tunneling through a living room. We are doing a short episode today, Elliot, because of Thanksgiving.
Woohoo, thanks.
Hopefully it will not take a lot to edit this together, but I guess it depends on how goofy we are.
I see the writing on the wall.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of the newsy stuff. We'll talk about some quick hacks, and then we'll release all of the listeners to go off and enjoy their own vacation and projects. What do you got in the news this week, Elliot?
Couple weeks ago, when was it?
Last week.
Was it only last week that
Yeah.
we saw the beginnings of the teardown and reverse engineering effort on the Nintendo Game & Watch?
Yes, and I think you said something like, they will never have the original firmware. And I think before the show even aired, they had dumped it.
Yeah, right? No, I think I said somebody's going to have to get in there and figure out a way to dump this. But to do that, they would have to crack the STM32 write protection. As you said, before it aired, Conrad Beckman had already gotten in there and pulled the ROMs out.
Well, go watch this video that they put out, which is the Game & Watch running Doom. It's a stripped down version of Doom to work on just an STM32, but it is running Doom code, which is cool. But they drop a little nugget in there that says they found the EEPROM had a little bit of ARM code on it that was being loaded onto the STM32 at runtime. And they didn't go into detail. They said they would, and I'm really excited for that because I want to know exactly what they did. But it sounds like they somehow put their own code into that, made sure that it signed the same. I'm assuming it was a signed block of code. And that could be, something as eloquent as making it echo out all of the registers in program memory to the serial terminal, or it could be, blinking them out on two GPIO pins, like one for data, one for clock. I mean, who knows? But you assume that they just got a little bit of code injection in there that allowed them to increment through the registers and get it out of the chip somehow.
Yep, that's the way you do it, and with incredible speed. So kudos, you two.
Yeah, and then just Wednesday morning, I saw them showing off Super Mario Brothers 3 running on it, which is exciting. It shipped with the original Super Mario Brothers, but then also, I believe, Pokemon from the Game Boy running on it, which would be another emulator that they put on there. So quite exciting times for homebrew on this little $50 handheld.
And then, in a week full of news, there was Espressif Leaks ESP32C3, which is I don't know what it is. It's not a successor to anything. A new chip coming out of Espressif that is basically an ESP8266 alike, except this one runs on a RISC-V core, which is really cool, and it's got a ton more peripherals. Before it was a 10 silica core, which is, nobody knows who they are, and what's it going to do for the hacker? I don't know if it's going to do much. Sprite came into the comments, actually. He works at Espressif now and said, look, this isn't such a big deal. It works with our SDK just like all the other chips do for our end clients. And this is, I guess, for their big industrial clients. It's no different. They write their code in C, they compile it up, it runs on it just the same. But for Espressif and for kind of the world, I think this is a neat thing to see that this open ISA is being used here, both because it probably reduces cost for Espressif as far as I know, and maybe someday for our people, it's going to bring kind of a unification of architectures, and that will make things easier to develop compilers for and stuff like that. But for just the hacker user, compile for this chip, compile for that chip. Just give me the compiler, man. I'm writing in C anyway.
News right after we recorded the podcast last week was that, unfortunately, Areceibo will be no more. The National Science Foundation has decided that the damage that we've been reporting on over the past couple months is too much for them to repair, and they are going to decommission formerly the world's largest radio telescope, having been recently eclipsed by China's FAST telescope. You can check out Maya Posh's article. She wrote a eulogy to Areceibo, and it goes into a little bit of the origins of it, but I liked how she talked about what we have as far as telescopes that are fully aimable, where the dish can actually be moved, and how that's different than the telescopes like FAST and Areceibo, where the dish is built into a natural depression. She also goes into the operating budgets, and it's really interesting to see that over the years, the operating budget for Areceibo has been in the like 11 to 14 million dollar per year range, which to me seems pretty low for a high precision science instrument. And for that reason, it's kind of sad to see it go. But there are a lot of projects out there that are able to do, different aspects of radio astronomy that this facility would have been to. And I suppose the hope is that we'll see increased investment in the future to help fill in the gaps.
And if you want to talk about radio telescopes used in the SETI project, Dan Maloney put out a piece just yesterday about the WOW signal and the radio telescope, the Giant Ear in Ohio, that picked it up. And that's a really cool looking one, done on a budget instead that was in the tens of thousands of dollars range. Really cool bit of engineering and a crazy looking device.
We wrapped up the circuit sculpture contest, and the winners were announced at the end of last week. I really loved seeing these. There were a ton in there that were worth looking at. I mean, obviously you have to narrow it down to a few winners, and so we wrote an article on the winners. You should go take a look at those. But Elliot, we should talk about some of our favorites, whether they won or not.
Go for it.
So did you see the lampshade one?
Yeah.
The
Absolutely.
circuit sculpture lampshade. So it is it's two different circuit board designs that are like the size of a stick of gum. And they're put into this lampshade where they're kind of beveled out like scales on a fish. And one of the PCBs has all of the copper removed from the backside so that the light kind of shines through, but the other still has it. And so it actually reflects the light from inside the shade down onto the PCB below it, the kind of the scale below it, and then that one reflects it out into the room. So you end up getting this like iridescent two-toned checkerboard of lampshades that Gareth put together, and it is awesome. There are two others that I just wanted to quickly cover. One is AJ Sunny built a really awesome rock band out of electronic components. So it's like figurines built out of electronics. And then Alexandra Kovor built a wearable light-up tiara that looks just spectacular.
And I know we're not necessarily showcasing the winners here, but the winner of most beautiful absolutely just hit my aesthetic senses in every possible way. Eric Brandal's Waldian is one of the most amazing circuit sculptures I've ever seen. It is a kind of random musical instrument, and it just sounds so good. It's laid out beautifully as well. It kind of exposes the logic chips that make it sound up in the design, and then it spits it out through a tube amplifier, which kind of takes the tones it's making, and through kind of being badly overdriven and some weird intermodulation distortion makes these kind of really beautiful grungy sounds out. You really need to check out the video on this one.
First up on my list of quick hacks, Steven's Workshop built the most incredible coffee table, and you're going to want to build one of these for yourself. It is like an infinity mirror. So there's a box, and inside the box, there are these films of, 90% mirror so that some of the light can get out, but it does reflect a lot of it back. And what you end up having is whatever's in the box looks like it's repeating like a kaleidoscope off into the distance. And in this case, it is one rung of a ladder along one side, and then a kind of like cave sconce or like mining light that you would have on the side of a mine. And so it looks like it's a mine shaft that you can climb down into. Next up, Intel's forgotten 1970s dual-core processor. This is a fascinating story that Chris Evans put together on looking at a processor that had 2 cores in it long before that was something that anybody had really heard of. And it turns out it was used in floppy disks. So if you're trying to transfer a lot of data, you need the controller to push those bits through very quickly. It looks like the second processor in here was used for speeding up the moving of those bits and also doing some special tasks like error checking. It was able to very quickly generate the CRCs for that. And finally, Kate Ayers has built a mushroom canoe. This is the coolest thing. It's built out of mycelium, which I'm aware of the word, but didn't realize until now that that is the root structure below the soil of mushrooms. And the way that she did this is she took a little bit of a wooden skeleton and kind of a mold and put the spores all around it, let those spores grow until that they had created mycelium all around the shape of the canoe. Pop the thing out, take it into the lake. It floats. It's impervious to water, and it's still alive. So is it self-healing? I'm not sure, but it will sprout more mushrooms if you get it wet.
Which you kind of do with the canoe. My first quick hack this week is high-speed spectrometer built with cheap linear CCD. This is the cleanest spectrometer build I've ever seen, and thanks to open source hardware design, you can build one too. Adrian Studer was looking into the linear CCD that makes this thing go, got help from Frank Milburn to build it into a full-fledged spectrometer. There are just a ton of details in their write-up. One of the coolest things I saw is they were looking at compact fluorescence spectrum, and they were able to resolve both the mercury that lights up and then the europium, which is one of the things that fluoresces. And they were doing it with such high resolution and speed that they could see that they go out of phase. So the mercury flashes and then the europium glows, and then the mercury flashes and the europium glows 60 times a second in line with your power voltage. Full of clever tricks. They use stainless steel stencils, like for PCBs, as the slits that they want to shine the light through. It's just a fantastic, refined build, and if you're into spectrometers, you owe it to yourself to check this one out. Next up, 3D printable cloth takes advantage of defects. This is a project by MIT's Jack Foreman. Basically, he's printing too fast or extruding too little, and he's using the combination of print speed and extrusion multiplier to make little blobbies and strings. Instead of saying, oh crap, I've got blobbies and strings, he's using this network of blobbies and strings to make stretchable fabrics, and he's calibrating the ways in which he does it to put patterns in these fabrics. And then, because it's a 3D printer, he can print crazy complex geometries out of them. As a party trick, he prints out what looks like a 70-meter long roll of toilet paper, except of course it's plastic. He's got lace patterns in there. He's got stretchy things. This is a thorough study of 2 different dimensions of these defects and trying to figure out what opportunities they open up. And I don't know how important this will be for industry, but if you've seen this presentation, it will change the way you think you can use your 3D printer. And last up, booting a PC from vinyl for a warmer, richer OS. Joseph has booted up an old PC, an IBM PC, a 5150, the first PC, off of a 64K FreeDOS bootable disk image that he has gotten a friend to cut into a record for him. Last week we were talking about cassette tapes and how I love this kind of encoding data as sound. This takes it to a whole nother level. Cassettes are old and busted. Vinyl's the new hotness. Who knew that the IBM PC had a secret cassette loader mechanism in it? If there's anything I'm thankful for this year, it's all of you crazy people out there doing crazy stuff like this and writing it up for us all here at Hackaday.
That's all the time we have for this episode of the Hackaday podcast. As always, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the show notes, which you'll find at hackaday.com/podcast. You can email us, editor@hackaday.com. We live and die by the tips that you send us, so if you do something cool or you see something cool, let us know about it. tips@hackaday.com. And until next time,
keep on hacking.
Gobble gobble. I don't know.
Best ever.
And let them grow for a period of time that I don't know.
Gobble gobble. That's a wrap.
Clap the clapboard. Done.